Join our knowledgeable hosts as they dive into the captivating universe of comic books, movies, TV shows, and pop culture. Get ready for vibrant discussions and a shared enthusiasm for all things superhero and beyond. A comic podcast straight from the panels. This is Beyond the Capes.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Cape podcast. With us today, Omar Morales. We are here to talk about his new book, Major Thomás. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here, man. I really like the background, dude. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and He-Man was a thing. It's still a thing, but it was all the rage back
for
then.
Sure. Yeah, I keep this background because I say it's ridiculous how many billionaires we have, and no one has made a Airbnb carved in a mountain of Castle Grayskull. I find that utterly ridiculous in every way.
I would agree. Agree.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you got $1 billion, your Airbnb is going to pay for itself. So, we always like to ask every creator when they come on the show, biggest thing is, of all the things you could have done, of all the different, jobs that are out there, the different interests, why comic books? Because it's one of the most rewarding things to see your name on that cover and knowing that people are reading your story and they're feeling exactly what you put out. It is also one of the most heartbreaking paths that we all walk along. What made you decide, this is for me?
Man, it's really a big combination of things. So when I was a kid, when I was entering kindergarten, I only spoke Spanish. I didn't know a lick of English. And so the teachers at the Catholic school told my parents, like, from now on, you got to only speak English to him. Just bombard him with English every way you can and get whatever he's interested in, just get him that in English. So it was comics, it was coloring books, it was toys and toy packaging. Like, I would read toy packaging, which was awesome back in the day, like Star Wars. You'd get an action figure on the back. It would have a paragraph about who that character is, and it would show you all these other characters you can buy, and then a lot of reruns of like the Spider-Man 1966 cartoon after school. I even would learn English through shows like Ultraman, which came from Japan, but it was subtitled with English.
Yeah.
And that would help me context and seeing the words on the screen. So, by the end of kindergarten, I had it figured out. And that was really my first introduction into American pop culture. And I absolutely fell in love with it, particularly Marvel, particularly Star Wars. And then, of course, Nintendo, and just classic 80s and 90s upbringing. So that's really what stoked the love of comics as a fan. Now, as just a human being, I think I'm just a natural writer and storyteller. As a little kid, I would entertain a lot of my relatives with jokes. I was the joke guy, the comedian, and as I got older, I would start to draw my own little comics, folded up binder paper. I'd staple the spine, and I had one of those pens that had the green, the red, the black, and the blue, all four in one.
Absolutely.
And I would make my own little OCs, and I had this one character that was an anthropomorphic dog, I guess you could say. He could talk, and he was funny, and it was a very lighthearted, little kid comic. It wasn't an action comic or anything like that. And then I kind of abandoned drawing, abandoned comics for a while, like an idiot in high school. I got more interested in girls. And I remember I sold my entire comic collection in order to go to the prom. I wanted to buy a prom ticket, which is really expensive back then, and so I was like, oh, I gotta hawk my collection so I can afford the limo and the tux and all that. So I did that. And then later in life, I found myself through the magic of eBay, buying back a lot of that stuff that I had sold, not everything, but the key issues that I just couldn't live without.
Definitely.
And by that point, I was working as a professional TV news person in small market TV, where I was doing, excuse me, a little bit of everything, right? So I was doing a lot of camera work, a lot of editing, some producing. Sometimes you're like a one-man band or a one-person band where you have to wear all the hats because no one else is available. And I was in a satellite bureau office where there was only a couple people in that bureau office. And so I had to learn how to do everything. So I was shooting my own stuff, cutting my own stuff, writing my own stuff. Sometimes I'd set up the camera on the tripod, run to the front of it, hold the mic, do a stand up, go back, rewatch it to make sure I was in frame, you know? And so in that job, I learned a lot about writing brevity, you know, like economizing your words. Every word counts. Like in a typical news story, if it's just like what they call a voiceover where they're just reading over like footage, it's like 45 seconds max. If you're doing like a full-on what they call a package, which has interviews and it's a self-contained thing that they just hit play on, that's like 90 seconds. And so one of the producers sat me down and he goes, "Hey man, here's the best piece of advice I can give you. Let the pictures and the words and the interviews and the natural ambient sound tell the story. You as the reporter don't need to go very heavy on narration, on stand-ups. You don't need to, you know, input your voice on this. Let it tell itself." And so I got to the point where I got in love with comics, and I had all this training, right, from my journalism world. And I knew a lot about framing and angles and height and pacing. And so I was like, you know what, man? Something inside me just said, like, I should try to make a comic. I have all of these tools and I have the passion. Let me give it a shot. And I learned how to write a proper comic script by reading All-Star Batman and Robin, right? It was Jim Lee and Frank Miller. And in the back, it had a 22-page, the full script of, you know, Frank Miller writing the script and giving directions to Jim Lee. And I was just blown away. So I studied the piss out of that script that was in the back of that book. It was a really thick, extra large, you know, #1 issue. And it was worth every penny. I still have it. I still look at it sometimes. Two masters really at the height of their powers making this book, which was a great book, you know. And so the first time I attempted to write my own script, I tried to copy panel by panel what Frank Miller did, except I was trying to like squeeze my own story into his structure, and it just flat out did not work. I learned very quickly after like 3 pages. I was like, wait, I've got to toss this out the window, and I have to dictate how many panels are on this page, which is the biggest panel that should have the most attention. Where do I want to do my page turns, you know, like and reveals and like things like that. And so it came fairly naturally, I would say. I still made a lot of mistakes, right? I made my first floppy and it didn't quite line up correctly. And then on top of that, I used a local printer and they printed it backwards where like the last 10 pages were in the front and it got flip-flopped, right? And so they had to unstaple it and redo the whole thing. And man, so many mistakes in the beginning. And that's really how it happened, man. I did that first one shot and I took it to WonderCon back when it was in San Francisco here locally. And I got a pretty good response, man. I was very, what's the right word? Encouraged by the response I had to that first floppy. It was just like an action adventure comic about a holy hitman, like a secret hitman for the Pope. Look, so imagine if the Pope employed his own Batman, you know, but instead of like the bat cowl, he wears like a monk's robe, and you know he does all the secret wet work for the Vatican that nobody knows about. And so it just went from there, man. I started doing anthology work. I did a book with Scout Comics called Lunar Ladies. I started doing fan fiction work, which is really a joy, dude. Like, I don't need anyone's permission. I don't have to have an editor per se. I just do it and tell the story that I want to tell. And because I have to give it away for free for legal reasons, there's like no pressure. I just do it on my own pace when I want. I release it when I want. And so, yeah, I have like a Star Wars fan fiction. I've got a couple Metroid fan fictions. And so those are so fun because I'm so passionate about those IPs that it's I get to play in that sandbox with like no stakes at all. It's not low stakes, it's
Yeah.
no stakes. I'm giving it away and just seeing if people react to it. And the reaction has been just absolutely amazing to those fan fictions. So it's further like validation and encouragement that like, okay, I've got my finger on the pulse of these IPs. I think I'm demonstrating to people that I could possibly handle an IP and do it right and do it with reverence and with, the right research. And I'm not, breaking anything in the lore or the canon. And so that takes me up to Major Thomás, which is really my dream project. So when people ask me like, hey, if you could do any project, any character, what would be your wish? It's this book that I have coming out with Comixology Originals, Major Thomás. It's everything that I've ever wanted to say in a comic. And hopefully, I get a chance to say more with that title.
Absolutely. It's funny you say that your background, because I feel like a lot of the people we have on the show now have a very similar background from film and television. And it's just like, I'm being told to write this story, but I really just want to write my own story, but it's not quite ready for movie or television. What they have a hard time doing is, though, a screenwriter playwright thinks that their 400 page is going to be the perfect graphic novel. No, your screenplay is the perfect 5 graphic novels and like a couple variant copies. You have a very great background in the editing, because I feel like you really understand there is limited space. When I tell you 22 pages with certain panels with the page flip, it's hard to describe that to someone that's just doing screenwriting. Where you definitely have a much easier time understanding, okay, yes, I really do have limited space to tell my story, so I really need to make every shot count.
I love
which
short
I think is
story.
great. Absolutely.
I love the short story format, man. I could do those forever.
Which is, I think, was really good too for the Comixology, giving you definitely more room. Because I could see where Major Thomás would work definitely as like a single floppy, and we tell a story. I mean, that first book alone probably could have been 12, 13 standard single issues easily, with different covers and whatnot. But the story definitely lends itself to giving you more room to run to really develop a good core foundation. I don't know if that was the plan originally, or if you're just like, hey, it's got the story right now for what it has to be a graphic novel.
Yeah, I prefer the graphic novel format. I've never really dabbled in single issues. I much prefer to give the consumer the full enchilada, and they can just, if they want to, chug it down and finish it all in one sitting, they can. If they want to take their time with it, they can. But I like to give a complete story arc. The only time I ever did single issues was kind of like a retrofit where Scout Comics, I had already done the Lunar Ladies as a full graphic novel, but they wanted to chop it up into bits and sell it as like 3 issues. And so we did that. And that was kind of like my first experience with single issues. But what I found was, the sales for number 1 were strong, and then for 2, less so. And then for 3, even less so. Because, people get distracted. They find, or they forget, where the story left off, or maybe they don't have an extra $4 or $5 that particular week that it's dropping, And so I've always preferred to give consumers the whole thing. And, just as a quick sidebar, Comixology is selling this book for $6.99, which is an insanely low barrier of entry for people to buy a full-on graphic novel. It's like 120 pages, and then there's like another 10 pages of like back matter and stuff. And if I keep telling everybody, if I was selling this book off the back of my truck as a physical graphic novel, I'd be charging $20-$25 minimum, if not more, for like a deluxe edition.
Absolutely.
And so $7, man, that's almost the price of a single issue. So if anyone's on the fence about it, hey, $7 is not a lot to ask for the amount of content that you're going to get.
Absolutely. Now, I guess as a later comic book reader and being kind of with comic books later in the day, the idea of Comixology and the fact that when your book releases, like, it's gonna not just go like to the United States, like it's a worldwide release. That has to be like crazy to think about, because obviously, in America, I would say we're spoiled. We're definitely in the U.S. here. We're spoiled knowing every Wednesday I can go to any shop and pick up
Yeah.
But for some, I mean, a lot of people overseas, that's not a possibility. But
Mhm.
I think one of the best things that Comixology does is giving a worldwide release and helping those people get these stories out to them. Is it wild to think that, come next week, your story is going to be across the world?
Yeah, there were so many attractive things about partnering with Amazon and Comixology Originals. Um, to your point, it's a worldwide release, and the creative team that helped me make this book are Latinos from all over the world, man. We've got Serge and Mao and Raul from Costa Rica. We have Fabi down in Brazil. Taylor Esposito is of Argentinian background, and he lives here in the States. Gab Contreras, who did the graphic design for the book, she's in Peru. So it means a lot to me to have the book available globally, so that they can also see it and share it with their friends and family. Hopefully Amazon exists in all those places. I'm pretty sure that it does.
Yeah.
And it's a worldwide platform, and this is a very kind of international type of appeal, I would say, with this book. And the other things too that are really attractive about it is right now Diamond and like Lunar, there's this big commotion in the industry where things are in flux, and with Comixology Originals, I'm immune to all of that. We're not depending
Yeah.
on physical distribution, although that is a possibility down the road. I know Comixology Originals partners with like Dark Horse, Mad Cave, and I think Ablaze,
Yep.
where they take select Comixology Original titles and then they translate them into print for the direct market. So, fingers crossed that happens down the road, so it gets like a second life in like comic book shops, but also libraries, which is very important. I don't know if you noticed, but in the back of the book, there's like a little guide, an educator's guide that was created by librarians and teachers from this really great nonprofit called Creators Assemble. And I really want this to reach younger audiences through, teachers and schools and libraries. And so, yeah, it's a great partnership with Amazon, and I couldn't be more thrilled, man. And just as a side note, not comics. Amazon Prime is streaming a movie called A Million Miles Away about the real life story of Jose M. Hernandez, who's a astronaut, real life astronaut, Mexican American, who grew up as a farm worker, made it to space, and there's so much synergy because he did the forward for my book. And
Awesome.
My book's on Amazon, his movie's on Amazon. There's just like a lot of just great synergies there. So it really is a partnership that was meant to be, I think.
Definitely. Amazon, if you're listening, you do a physical print. I think you should just put the movie and the book together hand in hand and just package deal.
Yeah. Wouldn't
Perfect.
that be amazing, right? A Blu-ray comic book combo.
There we go. One more question before we get to the
Sure.
whole reason we're here, which is to discuss the book.
Yeah.
And I have to ask this, being a Kevin Smith fan, I believe there is a Guinness World Record that is still for the largest comic book at the Secret Stash.
Yeah. So that first book that I did about the Holy Hitman was called Crusader. That was the first thing I ever did, and I wanted to make a big splash to kind of get my name out there because nobody had ever heard of me. And there's probably still a majority of people out there that haven't heard of me, but that's okay. So I came up with this idea for essentially a publicity stunt where I took the first chapter, the first floppy that I did with that character, and I blew it up poster size. It's like 2 feet by 3 feet, and it's a real book, that has a stapled spine and it has pages. It's huge. And I broke the Guinness World Record for largest comic book published. I broke the previously set record for a black and white Kiss comic about the heavy metal band Kiss. I think it was done by Platinum Studios. So then I broke the record. And then a few years later, like a Brazilian publisher broke my record. And then somebody came in after that and broke it again. So the record's been broken a handful of times. And so Ming Chen's a buddy of mine. He's a great dude. He helps Kevin run the Secret Stash along with Mike Zapsik. And so I got on their podcast and we talked about it, and they were like, "Hey, do you have copies of that Guinness, large size book?" I go, "Yeah, I do. I had to make a certain amount of copies in order to be eligible to break the record. And so I sent them one, and they had it on display there in the old stash before they moved. For like a long time, they had it with all the Guinness markings and the official stamps of approval and everything. And that was a fun campaign to kind of launch my comics career. Now they moved to the new location. I don't know if it's still on display. It might be, but yeah, Ming takes great care of me. He's a great dude. And yeah, I really love what him and Kevin and that whole group of people do. They really represent the fandom in such an authentic way.
Definitely. Yeah, I'll say being from Chicago and being here for the first ChronicCon was amazing. So, Ming, if you're going to listen to this, because I've talked to him a handful of times and he's been on the podcast, I think you should get the invite to ChronicCon and come here to Chicago.
You know what's funny is my wife and I, this was like 10 years ago. We were having a wedding anniversary and we stayed the night in San Jose, and Kevin was doing his show live in San Jose, the one he does with Ralph Garman, Hollywood Babylon. Yeah. And we went to a live recording of Hollywood Babylon. And not only did they announce us and celebrate our anniversary, Ralph Garman announced the Guinness World Record thing, and he showed pictures of Ming holding up the book in the secret stash. And Kevin's like, "Oh, get out of here, man." He's like, "That's you?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Did you write it or draw it?" I said, I drew it. And then afterwards, like, Kevin Smith fans were like kind of approaching me like, "Hey, do you have any more copies of that big book that we could buy?" I said, "No, I'm sorry, dude. They all sold out. They're gone, dude." Yeah. Like comic shops bought them up. Obviously, you know, the secret stash had one, and then I still keep one here in my garage. But Guinness has one in London in their offices, and so yeah, that was a cool experience to connect with him in that way, you know.
For sure, that's awesome. Well, obviously, the whole reason we're here is to talk about Major Thomás. So if this was a convention and you had the table and our viewers were at the table, what's the pitch? How do you describe what your story's about to them?
I would start with saying it's PG-13, right? I want parents and younger kids, you know, whether they're in middle school, high school, or even college, to know that it's like pretty clean. There's no swearing. There's no sexual situations. Does it have cartoony action adventure? Absolutely. It's a classic sci-fi story. And it's very much like a coming of age and then the hero's journey, right? It's a little bit of both. It's got a little bit of romance sprinkled into it. But really the heart of the story is to encourage young people to really go for it in life. And at that moment, the moment of truth in your life where you can go, you know, for your dreams or just settle, go for it, but really keep a laser focus on the path that you're on and don't look back. Don't look at the other path, you know, just keep your eyes laser trained on this dream that you have and just don't let anything get in your way. Where, you know, I think I could treat Major Thomás's story as a bit of a cautionary tale in that you've got to maintain a really tight focus and know what you want. Because if you're split between I want different things, you're going to end up not doing them well, you know, or you're going to end up screwing something up. And so that's really the main thrust of the story. But if I'm talking to just your every Wednesday comic crowd, you know, I'm probably not going to get that deep. I'm going to say, hey guys, action adventure, space adventure. We've got robots, we've got aliens, we've got explosions, we've got spaceships, we've got a ground campaign, and really, do you want to find out if Major Thomás gets back to Earth? Buy the book. You know, the book was partly inspired by these famous rock songs about an astronaut who's lost in space, Major Tom. First David Bowie, Space Oddity, and then Peter Schilling, who did the song Major Tom. And they both talk about this astronaut who's lost in space, and he's desperate to get back home. He's lonely, and he's desperate to find a way to make it back to Earth. And I really was inspired by that and thought, I want to know more about this guy. Who is he? Where does he come from? Why does he become an astronaut? How did he get lost in space? Does he ever make it back? Who's important to him back on Earth? And so I wanted to fill in that whole backstory, which doesn't really exist, and make it my own, you know. So I made the main character, you know, Mexican American, which aligns with my background, and I made the book with nothing but Latino creators so that it could resonate. And and sound authentic. But I believe the book is very accessible and it has a very universal message, right? You don't have to be Latino to enjoy this book. You can be anybody, of any age, really, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably one of the more refreshing parts about this story specifically. Um, Again, we all know the tale. Like, we could take like the sci-fi. The young kid gets plucked from Earth. He gets put into a dire situation in space, and he starts to integrate with it. But usually the trope is it's just like a 16, 17-year-old who's rebellious. He doesn't even want to go back to Earth. He's looking for adventure. He doesn't even talk about home. He accepts a new life. Where this was nice, that the character does want to get home. Like, this was just like completing a goal for him, which he made a promise that he would, get this goal. But he's still torn up because he loves his home, and I think it gives you more to want to like see him get back home. You feel for him instead of just like, all right, well, he's in space, but he seems to be having a good time. So
Right.
why are we even continuing the story? Because he's loving it.
Yeah, no, he definitely was not having a good time. He, he has to make a choice while he's out there. Like, I can just curl up, turn tail, and die here, or I have to make the choice to fight and fight my way out of this situation. And the big, part of the story is him finding the wherewithal, the guts, and the tenacity to not be denied, right? And that mirrors a lot of creators' experience in comics, man. There's 100 ways to die in this business. There's 100 ways to quit, and I experienced that too. I also have the imposter syndrome, and I also struggle with, why do I keep doing this? And I just keep going, man. I just keep fighting and trying to find a way. And so I think it shows and it resonates. I don't know that people will make that connection consciously, but maybe subconsciously they can relate to it with something that's going on in their own life. Could be a relationship, a job, a sporting dream. I think everyone has that something that like is yearning inside them to have success with and really feel self-actualized. So yeah, I really hope people dig it, man, and I'm glad that you seem to have enjoyed it.
Definitely. I think what I like more is you kept it classic with like the sci-fi. We have robot on one side, we got these reptilian. Sometimes people try to put a first space adventure out and they get too complex with the character is an ever-evolving parasite mixed with this, and it's fun. Don't get me wrong. When it's done right, it's fun, but I am okay with the basics. I know the basics. I love the basics.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, dude, because I'm targeting, high school, college age, or even like, people that are still finding themselves in their 20s and 30s. And goodness knows I was one of those people, where I wanted to keep it very accessible and digestible. I did not want to overdo it with world building and, to your point, over explaining, who the reptoids are and everything about their lore and their traditions. And, like, I didn't feel that was too important. As well as I used real locations that exist in our galaxy. I didn't invent things. I used real places, like the planet Wolf 1061c is a real planet and it doesn't spin. So half of it is burning hot because it's always facing the sun. The other half is freezing cold because it doesn't get any sunlight. That's a real place. The Ophiuchus constellation is a real constellation, and I put that in the book. The Giant Annihilator is an actual real black hole that exists in our galaxy, and that's in the book. I didn't want to start from scratch and start inventing things and creating canon. That's just not for me. I want to tell a character-driven story, not a details and plot-driven story. So thank you, man. I really am gratified to hear you say that, because I could get deeper into that stuff if I want to, if there's more, to be had down the road. But it still won't be my top priority. My top priority is I got you invested in these characters. You know who they are now, and let's keep going with them,
Definitely. And I mean, obviously the other big part of the story is the cultural impact, which I think in a lot of comic books we started to see more origin stories come back with a lot of Latin culture, Black history, just like which should have always been the case. I mean, I don't think I need to argue that at all. But it's still surprising that I don't think we see as much Latin origin stories. You know, Blue Beetle is like the first one that comes to mind that I could really say that has like that origin story. And if you were to ask me for more, I mean, we do have the new Falcon, which was great. Great addition to the films. I enjoyed it. After that, if you asked me like, could you name more? Like, I would have to sit down a little bit and really go through my head. Like, all right, Vibe would be the other one that I know of from DC Comics, and then it starts getting a little muddy for me.
No, I mean, we finally
might be one of the first.
Oh, that wouldn't that be amazing to be up there in the pantheon of like Blue Beetle and like White Tiger. We finally got White Tiger, and now he's gone just as soon as we got him. You know, if you've been watching the Daredevil show,
yes, that was a sad.
It was, man. I was like, dude, and it was such a compelling character for the episodes he was in. And I obviously I agree. I have an invested interest, but yeah, there should be more. And there should be more, you know, of the Asian characters too. And like you mentioned, the Black characters. Like Black Panther was such a phenomenon when it came out as a movie, you know, and that was so awesome to see. And, you know, I'm from Oakland. And so when that first scene opens up and then they're like, Oakland, California, you see the kids playing in the playground. And then we get like the backstory of how the Wakandans were hiding out in Oakland. I was in heaven, dude. I was like, yes, this is for me, you know. I loved it. And so, yeah, I think, you know, there should be more of it. And, you know, we're getting there slowly but surely, you know, with books like mine and, you know, others, you know. And you were just saying you're struggling to list off more than 2 or 3 Latino characters. That's because you're probably thinking more in the Marvel DC realm. But if you go into the more of the independents, you will find more of it. You know, there's just some friends of mine that run an entire Latino imprint called Chispa Comics. They were partnered with Scout, and now they're partnered with another company. I forgot, but they're like a sub imprint within this larger publisher. And so, you know, the stories are getting out there, and you can find them. It's just they're harder to find. They don't have as much, you know, marketing oomph behind them as you do with Disney and Marvel and Warner Brothers and DC. But yeah, I love Blue Beetle, dude. That movie, in another way, validated that hey, I'm on the right path here. You know, I've got something here, and there's obviously an audience for it.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things too, as you said before, you made this book to go into libraries. We had one character on here, or a creator here, who did Jane American, who essentially told the story of his family history with World War II and how his mom had to raise the homestead while his great grandfather had to go and fight. But he made it as a teacher himself in Michigan, so that it could go to libraries and that it could teach. Obviously, you kind of want the same. You want to bring that narrative with the facts and history to, I'm assuming, help inspire other kids that want to read this story and kind of, you know, be inspired like you were.
Yeah. So right away on page 1, I list out like 4 or 5 different NASA people who are Latinos, who are not only just astronauts, but like flight directors, engineers. You know, there's a really inspiring story of a woman from Colombia. She came to the U.S. with nothing. She was a housekeeper, worked her way up, got into college. I think she went to the University of Florida, and she worked her way up into NASA as an engineer, and then she became a flight director. So from Colombia to housekeeper to flight director of NASA. These are real people, right? I'm not making them up. You know, you can look them up. And so I wanted kids reading the book to say, okay, you know, NASA's not just white men. There's women here. There's people of color here. It's achievable, right? It's doable if you again set your mind to it, focus, and don't let anything get in your way. You think a little girl from Colombia had issues and barriers to get to NASA? Of course, but I bet you 100 to 1 that she focused and did not let anything get in her way. She had to literally cross borders. She had to sustain herself cleaning houses. She had to put herself through college, and she still made it, right? It is super inspiring. So right away on page 1, I put that out front and center. And then you see the forward, obviously, to my book from the astronaut Jose Hernandez. And that's also an indicator to kids that, like, hey, I'm here. You can do it too, you know? And then I sprinkle some other things throughout the book, little history things and NASA
Absolutely.
things. And so, yeah, I think it can be a teaching tool in a number of ways. And you see that in the back with the little 3-page educator's guide, where I think one of the fun exercises in that teacher's guide is after reading the book, create your own playlist of music that you would attach to Major Thomás, and I would be so thrilled to see some of these lists from these kids of playlists, Spotify playlists. Here's what I want to listen to. And, I'll be very honest with you. I listened to a lot of Interstellar soundtrack while I was writing this book. I think there's a lot of themes that resonate with Interstellar in Major Thomás and vice versa.
Definitely.
And so that was like my soundtrack that got me in the right vibe and the right mood, because I was really trying to, at the end of it, write an emotional story more than a hard science story. I call it science fiction light, so that it's digestible to your average person.
Yeah, no, definitely achieved. I mean, I know we talked about it. Great story. The ending, there's still a lot more story to tell, which brings us to the question of how long would you like this story to go? Because I'm assuming you have kind of a start and finish in mind of where you want to see the story kind of end.
Yeah, I do. I did write it as a standalone in case that, it just has to stop there. It can stop there, but, the door is cracked open enough where it can continue. And I definitely have some broad strokes ideas about where we could go in a volume 2 and do some interesting things that take up the stakes and increase some of the fantastic sci-fi factor. I've got a couple ideas about how to take it up a notch for the more hardcore sci-fi audience, and to kind of broaden some of the themes, because we're living in an interesting time right now where we're humans and we realize we're not doing the best job with our planet in terms of the environment and keeping the planet healthy. But also AI is a big threat, I think, to human ingenuity, creativity, right? The comics community hates AI because we don't want anybody writing our stuff. We don't want anybody stealing our art and then making crappy art from it,
Absolutely.
And so we're kind of at this tipping point in humanity, I think, where I'm a huge believer in alien life, and I consume lots of YouTube videos about the possibilities of alien life and proof. And I believe the disclosure, it might be within reach now, man. It might be within 10 years. It could be in our lifetime that the governments around the world disclose what they know and share it with the people. I feel like the dam is going to burst because it's just getting harder and harder for them to keep the secret. Like, the stuff is getting out there. And these are all things that I would love to play with and explore in further episodes of installments of Major Thomás. I mean, I've already put the aliens in. We already have the AI robots in. But what does that really mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I've got ideas. And I know Lisa has been, thus far from reviewers, a super popular character, and I want to do a lot more with her. And so I would love to do more with her, as well as all the other main characters. There's the little robotic monkey, Al3, who, by the way, I named him Albert III and Al3 for short, because the first monkey that NASA put in space was Albert 1. The second one was Albert 2. And that was like back in the 40s. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to name him Albert 3, except he's a robot. He's not a real monkey. But it still keeps that tradition of monkeys going into space with NASA. So that was like a little tip of the cap to an actual historical factoid with NASA.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to say, in your story, there's so many characters that I would love to see the main storyline get complete. I mean, that's what we want. Yeah. But if you were given the option to go back and like do certain characters, I wouldn't mind finding out, like, why is there an army of robot men on this half world? Like, where did they come from? How did they find out about this?
Yeah.
You've introduced so many elements that if you did like one shots, it definitely works for those different characters.
I actually had it on my mind, but I ran out of time. I wanted to do a little like a side story, like a backup story, like maybe 6 to 8 pages in the back, where it answers some of those questions, right? Where we see that the first time they go into NASA goes into hyperspace, it's actually Al-3 by himself.
Yeah.
And they send him out to probe and then come back to report like, okay, this is doable. Like my body didn't crumble. The spaceship didn't crumble. Like, you know, we can do this. And I wanted to show like little glimpses of what he finds and who is spying on him, you know, who's naturally out there already. And you have this Earth shuttle that comes out here and is exploring and probing. But like, it's like, who watches the Watchmen? Somebody's watching Al-3 as an outsider come into their territory. And so we learn a little bit more, just a glimpse of who are they? Why are they there? Who put them there? Right. And I have answers to all that in my head, but these are things that are like only exist in my head because, you know, there's not enough time to your point, boggle down the story
Absolutely.
with all this stuff. But yeah, I could very much get into that in a volume 2. There's lots of things and ways I could go with it. I have a pretty strong idea of what I want to do if I get the chance, and I hope that I do. So the number one question I'm getting from everybody and their mother is print. What about print? I want a print version of this. And my answer is go buy it digitally, and the better it sells digitally, the better chance maybe I will have that it goes into print. So even if print is your preferred, buy it digitally. It's only $7, and do me a favor, because the better it sells digitally, maybe the better chance I have to A, do more with the characters, and B, you know, have it come out in print.
Absolutely. And it's going to be great. I know it's coming out. I think next week I think March 25th is the launch on Comixology for it.
Yeah.
So we'll be excited for that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Definitely. Now I know we have a little bit of time left before we wrap up. You were speaking on, you do have another project in the works.
Yeah. It's a really heartfelt charity project with Mad Cave Studios. They have an anthology out right now called LA Strong, and I have I would call it a vignette in that book. It's a bunch of like one pagers. There's a couple of the stories that are like 2 or 3 pages. Like I think Amit Tischler and his writing partner have like a short story in there. And then the pedestrian, which is a new character that's on the scene, has like a little 2 or 3 page story. But for the most part, it's a bunch of like one pagers. And I've got one in the very back. I think it's the final story or vignette in the back of the book. But it's like 60 pages. It's selling for $9.99, and all the proceeds go to comics creators that were impacted by the LA fire. So people that like lost their house or lost a car or have like an insurance need or whatever. The Mad Cave has really done a wonderful job of stepping up and putting this book together to benefit them. And it's loaded with amazing creators, man. Like Dan Didio has a piece in it. Mark Guggenheim has a piece in it. Stephanie Phillips, Jody Hauser. I mean, there's a bunch of just amazing writers, and I'm just like in awe, you know, having a story in this thing with all these amazing creators. And there's so many different art styles in there. My story was partnered with Stefano Cardoselli. He's from Italy, and he has this like really cool, like I wouldn't call it Mobius, but it's got that kind of dystopian, kind of chaotic feel to it, and it's a really amazing piece of art that they paired with my little vignette. And so yeah, the launch for it is actually today, but you know, people should not be afraid of going to their local comic shop and asking for it. You know, it's through Lunar Distribution. There's an order code for it. You can ask your shop to order it in. But yeah, Mad Cave is doing a really good job of doing a launch party in LA at a store where they're going to have some of the creators there signing. I'm actually going to be signing here locally at a local shop in the Bay Area. I think there's a store in New Jersey who's also going to be hosting some East Coast creators to sign the book. And I really hope that it raises a ton of money for these comics creators that were impacted, man. So yeah, LA Strong, 60 pages, $10, and it goes for a good cause. So go out there and ask for it.
Absolutely. Both great projects. Like I said, I can't wait for Major Thomás to get in everyone's hands.
Thank you.
For everyone listening, obviously they'll know Comixology, depending on when you're listening to this, It's either out coming out or it's out now. Go to
Mhm.
Comixology, get it. Where is the best place for people to stay in contact with you, see what you're working on next, when the next book's coming out? Where's the best place?
Yeah. So theforestmedia.com is my website. That's really like my hub of everything. It's got links to all my social media at the bottom, but I use the same handle everywhere. It's here on your screen. O Morales 81. I use that handle everywhere, every social media platform, even like Xbox, PlayStation, other places. So you can find me there. And my website too has like the fan fictions I mentioned that are available for free. There's a Mandalorian, there's 2 Metroids, and then there's one. It's a holiday Christmas themed short story that I give away for free, and it's that's the best clearinghouse for keeping up with me and my projects and all the other things I have going on. It has a contact form too. Like if you want to send me an email through my website, I can get the message. But yeah, man, social media, Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on all of them, and I try to maintain all of them, so it's not hard to find me. And I would love feedback too, please. If you read Major Thomás, if you love it, if you hate it, tell me why. I want to hear it.
Absolutely. Everyone listening, go out to Comixology, read the book. You're going to love it. It's a great story, fantastic ending. It's going to be a great story. We're going to get volume 2 as long as you guys all go out and get it. If you enjoyed this episode and more, we are part of the Uncensored Nerds Network. You can hear our show exclusively on there. Us, We Got Issues, Plot Hole Productions, the Comic-Con podcast, and more. All your comic book needs, Uncensored Nerds Network. Find us there. And again, follow Omar, follow the journey, read Major Thomás. You won't be disappointed. Everyone listening, we hope you had fun. Have a good night.